Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast. I'm Thomas Miller in one room.
And I'm Robert Glasscock in another room.
We are both in Robert's home, and for the second time in a year, basically, I was through here last year, and we are together again, but we had to do it like this so that we could do our charts and draw and show you pictures and all of that. But we're going to talk about an upcoming aspect that is going to be unfolding in April of 2025, but could have much longer implications in the sky and in our world. We're talking about Mars moving back into the sign of Leo after its recent retrograde. It went retrograde in December of 2024. It was at 6 degrees of Leo. It went backwards back into Cancer. Now it's getting ready to go back into Leo, and finally by early May it will have returned back to where it was. However, just 2 days before it went retrograde last December is when that United Healthcare CEO was shot down on the streets of Manhattan. And let me show you the big significance of that as we take a look at this chart right off the bat, is that Mars then was opposite Pluto, and now as it's moving back in right here, it is even closer to Pluto than it was then. So that opposition is even stronger now. We have several things that we're going to pick apart on this, but Robert, first of all, what is just the big deal about now that Mars is moving back into Leo and it's opposite Pluto?
It is a big deal. First of all, this is exact on April the 18th, but you're going to feel it a little bit before then because Mars aspects tend to be felt a week or sometimes even a little longer ahead of when they're partile or exact. So there's that. It's exact on the 18th. It's going to be felt for some weeks after as well. This is an aspect of violence. What can I tell you? Mars opposite Pluto. It's in a T-square with the Sun at 2954 Aries. Aries is another sign of violence. These are ancient traditions. This is not something I'm just making up to sound dire. Now, these can not only be natural disasters, fires, earthquakes, tsunamis. They can also be wars and warmongering, which is certainly continuing to rise exponentially here. These can also be aspects of assassinations and assassination attempts. This is all very dramatic. And of course, the question becomes, how do we react to that? So that's something Thomas and I will be talking about today.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've discussed here that we get to do, being here together in the same place, is kind of get a game plan on this. And one of the things that I've done in my work on fun astrology, and we did a Sunday night thing called Level Up, is I've just really tried to be deliberate, intentional, and somewhat obstructive even in taking the high timeline, the positive side, the follow your intuition, dive into your spirit side of things. And yet, when we look at some of these things that are ahead, the other real true thing that is there for both of us is, how much should we talk about the dark side, the shadow side? How much do you want to know? And what kind of responsibility is it for us to at least point out that there are these challenging sides? I know I would want to know. What I wouldn't want, the stopping point, is I wouldn't want us telling you what to do. That would be the thing. I would like, okay, wait, tell me, and then I'm going to go to source. I'm going to go to my intuition, and I'm going to ask for the answers of what's right for me. And I think, Robert, that's something that you pointed out that's really strong in this chart as well.
Well, it is, Thomas. There are several things here. If you look back at the chart, you'll also notice that Mercury is just entering Aries along with Neptune. They're both at 0 and 1 degree, right around 1 degree Aries. And they are both in an out of sign square to the moon, which is in the last degrees of Sag, about to go into Capricorn. So the moon is the public. The moon is our emotional, irrational, intuitive response to the world situation. In a square like this to Mercury and Neptune represent misinformation, lies, propaganda. So there is that to hold in mind. Mercury Neptune is also an aspect of fear mongering, panic, desperation, exaggeration, false hopes, as well as false fears. So, one of the keys to this whole configuration is to be aware that what we may be being told is simply not true. It's up to us to further research what is and what isn't true. So this is one of the reasons God has given us the internet, if you will, God and Bill Gates. We can look further if we're afraid. Also, the moon is opposite Jupiter in this chart. Jupiter is in Gemini. The moon is in Sagittarius. Again, the moon is the public. So what we can do in the face of all of these potential calamities, and they are real, the potential is really there for them. What can we do? In the privacy of our own self, we can join other like-minded people mentally, meditatively. There's a wonderful old quote in the Bible from Matthew 6:6 that says, when you pray, pray not as the hypocrites do, loudly and in public, but go into your closet and shut the door behind you and pray to your Father in heaven in private, and he will reward you publicly. And when you pray, say, Our Father which art in heaven, and so on. Note that idea of communing with God or the universal consciousness in private. And that's the key, because in this realm of privacy, you can connect with the global communities that are also seeking ways out of and around these threats of war and fear-mongering and calamity. This turns out to be potentially a very positive chart in very perilous times coming right up.
Yeah.
And Thomas, speak to us now about some of the ramifications financially and economically with this chart, because boy, are those there too.
Well, I've been doing a lot of studying on this. Let's go back here and we'll pick apart a couple of the things that we need to look at. First of all, I've done this on some of my fun astrology stuff, but let's just talk about it here. Let's look at Pluto being in the early degrees of, I'm on a different setup here, obviously, in your wonderful home, and so I'm having to make sure I get the right spots. There we go. 3 degrees Aquarius for Pluto is in a sign-based square, at least, with Neptune in Taurus. And that Neptune in Taurus, Taurus is the money sign. And one of the things I heard early on when this changed in there about 7 years ago, so 2018-ish, but one of the comments was that this was going to shake up and disrupt the monetary system, just like it did back in the 1930s, late 30s. After the Great Depression, there was a big monetary reset from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but boy, if it is going to shake up things, now is the time, because these two at least are sign-based square to each other, and that would make a lot of sense with Pluto being the revolutionary. The other one that we have to take a look at is Neptune moving into Aries, and Robert mentioned it before, but I'm going to add another component that doesn't get exact until February of 2024. But right now, I mean, you can tell they're only less than 2 degrees apart, well, two and a little bit apart here, Saturn and Neptune. And when that one has happened, there have been a lot of disruptions in the past, including things like the fall, the collapse of the Berlin Wall. President Reagan, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And within 2 years, communism basically had ended. That happened under Neptune Saturn aspect. But Neptune moving into Aries has been a sign of war in the past. We have to go back 150 to 165 years on that one. That takes us back to the Civil War, and then there's a string of wars as we go back from that. So the whole dynamic here is, let's just say, on shaky ground. Now, I'll tell you how I processed it as a 65-year-old person with my retirement account is I took it a lot to cash before the big drop. And the reason I did was simply based on the astrology and then comparing the astrology to the newspaper. We used to call it a newspaper, to the online news source or your phone. Took a look at the news and I'm like, wait a minute. This is moving in more of the direction of the challenging side of these aspects that we're talking about. How did I determine that? I got online and I did hours and hours of reading, and I got on blogs and I asked other people what they wanted to do, what they were going to do, and I asked Quora or Reddit or one of those, whatever it is. No, none of that. I got inside, and basically through me and intuition and looking at the screen and based on a prior knowledge of, I used to be Series 7 licensed, so I had that background. I just sat with it and I thought, what makes sense as a fiduciary? What should I best do here? And the answers started to bubble up. And that's all stuff that's right for me. What anybody else is doing is not necessarily right for me. And I don't even need the ideas, because to me, all the answers are inside for all of us. So that's what I would advise. If you need to get counsel, make sure it's wise counsel. Because like Robert said, right here, we can just look at it. Let's go back to that Mercury and Neptune just inside Aries. That can be lots of trickery and foolery and confusion and illusion and delusion, even stronger in Aries, or at least manifest differently. In Pisces, it was more of its own nature. Now it's more of a kind of a combative nature, wouldn't you say, Robert? I mean, how would you look at that and advise people to be on the watch of where that confusion could come from?
Well, certainly the confusion can come from all of the media, most of which are now owned by billionaires who have a stake in how things and in what directions they progress. We no longer have a free or objective media. Even the big name brands, I don't need to mention them, are now owned by billionaires, in essence, who have a deliberate political perspective to push. We know the names. So it behooves all of us then to dig a little deeper into our computers, again, thank God and Bill Gates, to find the niche news markets that give us a more objective and truthful picture of what is going on. So that's one thing. Another one is to be aware of energies, as always in astrology. Acting out of fear or paranoia simply reinforces whatever it is you're afraid of and paranoid about it. Facts, if you can find them, and sometimes it takes a little work and effort, facts draw facts, just like fear draws fear, paranoia draws paranoia. So arming ourselves with objective facts is a tremendous positive step, and it's not a hard one to do. That's the danger here. And it's a very real danger because it bleeds over into all these situations that are on the tipping points of wars all around the world. Thomas has mentioned Taiwan and China.
Yeah, I mean that's a big symbolism of Neptune moving into Aries. It's the one thing that I started watching was, what do we have? And we have a trade war, and now we're moving ships into the Middle East. So I mean, these are all the things. This is where I was saying is that what we're seeing from there are several other things too that we've talked about over the years and period of time about where this could go, as far as the United States, the Pluto return. We're still under the orb of that, I believe. So there are just a number of things. Here's the bottom line. The astrology for a long time, for millennia, has pointed to this period. Never before have the 5 outer planets changed signs in such a short period of time. So we have symbolisms that we've been aware of for a long time. Now we're here, and the newspaper is starting to paralyze. I keep saying newspaper. Boy, that really dates me. I apologize. I don't have my phone in here, but the news apps on your phone show you that things are moving in these kinds of directions where caution and wisdom and intuition, I think, are the keys right now. Don't get caught flat-footed on this, but also, as Robert said very pointedly, don't go to fear as well. So we'll leave it there for that. I hope that this has at least shown you that here is yet another notch on the tree of things that we need to be watching, and we'll be watching with you. And as things present themselves that are relevant from an astrological perspective of things happening in the sky, we'll jump on here and update you. Meanwhile, if you'd like to take a look at your own chart, because that's actually the other little area that I did, was look at my chart and see some of the things that I should be doing from that perspective. You can also do a consultation chart. You can do a horary chart. And this guy right here is actually doing a reading this afternoon as we're recording this ahead of it. And if you'd like to be next on his schedule, just check out the link in the show notes to his newly designed website, and you can get in touch with him for that. Robert, thanks for letting me crash your pad.
Oh, Thomas, I'm happy to have you here.
All right, and we'll see you guys in the next Old Soul, New Soul Astrology podcast from Little Rock, Arkansas, coming up soon. Thanks for watching.